All right, I want to welcome everybody to the Division 5 of the Lone Star region, their monthly meeting. Uh, we have a great clinic lined up for you today for everybody. We have as far as announcements go, just want to share everybody from the meetup that we had in June. We had three new members join, and then I see one of them is actually on tonight. So Cameron is a new member. Cameron, do you have a camera? Do you want to join in and say anything for us?
Sure, I'm not gonna turn on my camera. I'm busy right now
Okay.
doing double duty.
Yeah, not a problem. Just
But
introduce yourself, and we just want to recognize the new members. So,
yeah, no problem. Hello everybody. My name's Cameron Oden. If you haven't seen my name up at the top, I'm a new member of the NMRA. I joined when Mikey, and Brooks came down to Lubbock, Texas to support our local club, which is the Lubbock Model Railroad Association. We had a nice little get together at our local window museum. And I figured, well, I might as well just go ahead and pull the trigger and join the NMRA. Mike really made the organization sound very welcoming. So I figured I might as well go and do it while I have the chance. I primarily model in O gauge, and I look forward to learning something a bit new about the hobby and also be a part of the NMRA.
cool. Well, thanks for joining. We're glad to have you on.
Thank you.
Um, and then so we got a pretty short list today, but I know we have Dennis Rice on. You're in the Abilene area, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm up in
Right.
Holly, just
Yeah.
15 miles from downtown.
Yeah,
Um,
and you
and
moved
I
from Division 3, right?
I lived in Richardson
Right.
and was active in the uh, NMRA Division 3 group there,
Cool.
and also in the T-Track group.
Nice. Well, glad to have you again. I know you've been on before, so um, and we also have Ken Rediger. He's the Abilene in the Abilene area as well, and then of course Robert Thomas joining us from Division 6 in San Antonio. So he's always great in promoting Division 5 and helping us out too. So and Tom or Robert, y'all aren't doing uh sorry, I lost my train of thought. Zoom meetings yet? Y'all just meeting in person right now, right?
Yeah, the Division
Good.
6 is currently meeting in person. We have a luncheon every other month on the second Saturday of the month here in San Antonio. We'll get virtual up and running again before long. And
Cool.
Roland Merrick is still holding a quarterly Zoom call for the area. You get in touch with him. It's called the Railroad Social, but South
Okay.
Texas Railroad Social. But he's still doing that. We have that this Thursday.
Good. Yeah, good to know that he's doing that. So, um, nice. Well, and then also got Joe Lysing on. So he's Division 1, I think, from the LSR too. So also convention chairman, and many other things. So welcome. Um, so I want to open the floor. I want to. So one more thing. Just want to remind everybody of the national convention coming up in August. Hotel rates are going up at the end of July, so right at the 1st of August. So if you haven't booked hotel room for that, go ahead and do so because those rates will double. Or more than that at that time. So just got an email about that today about for that. So and anyway, it's going to be a fun time. It's there at the Gaylord Texan and in Dallas in Grapevine, Texas. So up in the DFW area. And I want to open the floor up for anybody that if they have anything to show or questions, anything to talk about with other members. Just keep it brief real quick. So, but I'd like to open the floor for show and tell if anybody's got anything.
Yeah, Brooks, if I may,
Yeah.
talk about the convention for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
For those of you that may not be aware, we haven't had a national NMRA convention in our state for 34 years. This is a great opportunity to experience an NMRA national convention close to home. Registrations are still available. As Brooks mentioned, the deeply discounted hotel room rate is still available till the end of the month. There are still some clinics and tours that require registration, but if you're maybe kind of thinking about registering and attending the convention, now is the time to do so. I highly encourage you to come and visit us. As Brooks mentioned, we're looking for a great time. We've got 362 hours of clinics, 5 different railroad rides, clinicians coming from all over the world. You don't want to miss out, and I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you.
I'd like to make a minor addition, is that the LSR conventions that have been held in the state tend to not have any vendors available, and the NMRA convention always has the major vendors displaying their equipment. That's unfortunately I can't attend, but that's one issue that I would really appreciate seeing in the LSR conventions.
Okay.
Yeah, Dennis, you're absolutely right. The National Train Show will be taking place on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Manufacturers from all over, every scale, their new product lines, introducing them, so forth and so on. And as a registrant of the convention, we have exclusive access to the National Train Show on Friday morning.
Yeah, and that convention's actually attached to the hotel. So if you didn't go to the St. Louis last year, you had to jump on a bus, cross the river to another facility. But this one, it's just a short walk across the complex there. So and you don't even have to leave the building. So you don't have to get out and sweat in the 105-degree weather we've been having around here. So so it's going to be a great place.
All right. So Brooks, with that said, we've got people coming from out of state and they're concerned about how warm it's going to be. So the key words there is it's not going to be hot. It's going to be warm. It's going to be seasonably warm.
Yes. Yes, it's been hotter. We're just in the preheating mode right now. So, all right. Anybody else got anything they want to share?
Yeah, Brooks, I brought half a dozen photos if I could have a couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah. Let me enable the screen sharing. I haven't done that yet. So, all right. Go ahead.
Sure. All right. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. So the recent meeting that you hosted, Brooks, inspired me to work on a Fremo project. And I know we've talked in the past about maybe me bringing something up to San Angelo. But I'm working on a project now that is going to be a set of Fremo modules and a sort of fantasy freelance project. So there was in Kansas, a Wichita Northwestern Railroad that went out of business in the 1940s. So I'm doing a what if the Wichita Northwestern became the Wichita and Northwestern and survived into the modern era is the theme for these modules. And so I'm going to build about a half a dozen sections, sort of 2x4 sections, and represent the town of Larned, Kansas, which had the Wichita Northwestern and interchanges with the Mopac and Santa Fe, and set this somewhere in the late 1980s. Hopefully the Mopac, maybe in a fantasy still surviving, or maybe the UP at that time. So building this, got started cutting the baseboards for the sections here, got my number 8 turnout fast tracks jig in to build the turnouts required for Fremo, number 8's on the main line. Since this is a kind of freelance, working on artwork and printing my own decals for some cars, some printed in white. I've sent to Bill Brillinger at Precision Design. He's printed me some sets in white. Worked on some concepts for cars for the Wichita Northwestern using some AccuRail models and Athearn copper here that I could easily modify the artwork on and leave some of the data stencils. So coming along here, working on weathering these, trading a few cars with others now in the freelance world to build up, something like a couple dozen cars for this, which could be a switching layout in addition to Primo. And so, this past weekend, I've been working on weathering, finding some other yellow box cars out there to use as inspiration. And so it's coming along. And for power, looking at easy to patch out models. Athearn Genesis recently released the GP15 model for the Rock Island. It had almost no lettering on it other than the Rock Island Herald under the cab. So a good candidate to patch out to make some power for the Wichita and Northwestern. And so collecting just a couple of locomotives. I also grabbed this GP15 used off of eBay. Keith Robinson put DCC and sound in it for me, so it's working real well. And get both of these patched out and have some power for the project. Hopefully, we'll make something like an Elk City meet, or maybe come up and see you if you get your modules going, Brooks, and see how it goes. That's what I had. You're muted there, Brooks.
I forgot that I did that. Well, no, that's awesome. I got to applaud you for actually going through all that. That's seems like quite a bit of work in such a short time. So,
scratches an itch, right? I've been doing my, I've done so many cars with, cross rods and cars for so long. So something as a change of pace and a good project for modular. So, get any questions?
Could you go back to your track plan real quick?
Yeah.
I was thinking, so down here at the bottom of your T where your ATSF lines are,
right.
What if you moved that or maybe did another module where you had it come out to either double track or single track, so you could that way you can hook it, like it could become like a T section in a modular setup.
Right.
You thought of that?
Yeah. Yeah, the thing I'm worried about is that this Y might not meet standards because I might have to redesign it to make a broader curve here. But certainly do that. Put that right in the middle. Right. Put that Y right in the middle and make it a T. Yep, certainly.
Yeah. What's your Y radius set right now?
I set any rail to turn red if it got less than 26 inches. So it's probably 26, 28 inches, something like that.
It might work for a branch line. They might let you do something like that. So
yeah. We're working on this part now. I got the fixtures in for number 8 turnouts. Cool. Right, these on the main will need to be number 8s.
Yeah, that number 8 should look pretty good on there. So is your main going to go on the outside? Is it going to continue on the outside of your yard or through the middle?
It'll be the next to the top. I imagine that the top line will be, maybe I'll find a flat for a grain elevator or just imagine it's there. And
siding.
Yeah, the Santa Fe had grain elevators along this double track. It turns into more than 2 tracks there.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Is your layout going to be strictly a T, or is it going to be expanded from that?
I'm going to limit myself to this for now for a project. Maybe make 4 pairs that can be, boxed up. But you know how it goes. You build some and you build some more.
Are you building when you say modular? Are you talking about the modular type standing on legs or something else?
That's right. It'll be on legs. The 2 ends, left and right, will meet the Fremo standard. And I've made a Facebook page for it. If you're interested, you can search for Wichita and Northwestern in HO scale and follow along with the build.
Well, you'll have to update us on future meetings how it's going along. Yeah.
Thanks, Brooks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody have anything else they want to share? All right. Okay. Well, I think that'll wrap this up for that, and I think we should move on to our clinician. So I want to welcome Fred Soward. I think that's the how you pronounce your last name, if I did it right. So it is Fred.
Oh, not an owl.
Oh, okay. What? Sorry, I didn't get it.
Said you got it. Soward. Oh, not owl. In Kentucky,
Oh.
they think it's pronounced Soward.
Okay. All right. Good. So he's from Division 8 of in the Mid-Continent region. Is that correct?
Mid-Central.
Mid-Central. Okay. I know it's like there's two of them that have like almost the same abbreviations in there. So he's going to present his clinic to us on don't throw out the trash with the trash. So this is a great clinic. I've seen it on YouTube. So if you don't know, Division 8 actually has their own YouTube channel. So I've subscribed to that one, and they have some great clinics on there as well. And then also just to let y'all know too, I've got a YouTube channel out for Division 5. And I just put up all the previous recordings from that. So if you haven't checked that out, just Google Division 5 LSR or Lone Star Region Division 5, and that should come up there. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Fred, and so it's yours to present to us now.
Thanks, Brooks. Let me go ahead and share that screen. Everybody ought to be able to see it. As I told Brooks earlier, most of this is, well, about half of it, I guess, maybe a little less than that, is a PowerPoint slide deck. And then after that, I've got some hands-on stuff that I'll do here. That seems to work pretty well. As Brooks said, my name is Fred Soward. I'm actually in Louisville, Kentucky. Division 8 is primarily a Louisville and Southern Indiana division, although we extend all the way down to the Tennessee border down in Bowling Green. So it's a fairly large division. We have about 120 people now, and that's about where we've hovered for the last, probably 10 years or so. We meet monthly, except for July, where we do a picnic, and December, when we do a Christmas party, end of year party, and so forth. I'm currently the assistant superintendent. I termed out of being the superintendent, and they said, wait, you can't go away so fast. So I stepped into the assistant superintendent job. I'm also the Mid-Central Region secretary until the 1st of August, where I turn that in. And at the national convention, I will become the central district director on the NMRA board. So I don't know how to say no, I guess is the best way to explain that. So this presentation is all about not throwing out the trash, stuff that you might have thrown away, but you probably shouldn't have thrown away. You might be able to do it in your modeling. So otherwise known as adventures in repurposing stuff. And it doesn't matter what you call it. And there's a whole lot of stuff things that you might call it, repurpose, reuse, salvage, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is you're putting something to use on your model railroad in a way that it was not originally intended to be used, instead of throwing that out with the trash. I do another clinic about repurposing rolling stock and locomotives that might not be appropriate for your model railroad. That's not what this one is about at all. What's required? The first thing is your own imagination, and that's really where this begins. I'm going to give you some ideas, some things that I've done, some things that I've seen some other people do. Don't limit it to what we've done. You need some basic tools. We've all got these. Some cutting pliers, some side cutters, maybe just some pliers themselves, scissors. And I use some scissors that we bought at IKEA ages ago for less than $5, and they work just great for some of the things that I'm going to do here. A flat tip, cross tip, or a Phillips or a hex star screwdrivers. You're going to need some screwdrivers. You're going to be taking some things apart as well. You might need some latex gloves. It depends upon what you're doing in here. Some of the things I'm going to talk about are magnetic media, such as videotapes. If you still have some VCR tapes or diskettes and so forth, well, that's magnetic media. It's got, some iron oxides on the magnetic media. It's not really good for you long term. For the most part, you're going to handle it long enough to take it out and throw it away. Wash your hands. You're going to be fine. But if it bothers you, then wear some gloves. And in some of the other things, you might come up with some gooky stuff and so forth. Safety glasses, absolutely, for taking some of these things apart, because you don't know where springs and other little bits and things will go. And paper towels, of course. If you're going to work with hard drives, removable disks, such as diskette, 3.5-inch diskettes, 5 1/4, whatever, my recommendation as a former IT guy and a former security guy is to find some software out there that will let you wipe clean that hard disk or removable disk. There's probably nothing on there that's important to anybody, but there may be some information on there, some personal data, some financials, and so forth. You might want to wipe that out. I always make the recommendation, because that's kind of one of the caveats of being an IT guy. It's like, you should really wipe that. Once you take it out of this, if you run some scissors through it, nobody's going to do anything with it anyway, especially the so forth. And stuff. You need stuff, and that's what we're going to talk about is stuff. Where do you get it? Well, you know what? Fast food restaurants. What comes out of the kitchen? Absolutely. Lawn and garden services. Sometimes they leave those little signs in your yard, and there's some stuff in there. Layouts, unfortunately, that are going away. I've salvaged an awful lot of stuff from friends' layouts that got taken down for one reason or another, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Outdated electronics. And again, as a former IT guy, as soon as you buy it, it's already outdated. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like 3.5-inch diskettes. There aren't very many people using those anymore. There are some places that are still using them. If you go to Chuck E. Cheese, do you know that Chuck E. Cheese still uploads their programs using diskettes, using 3.5-inch diskettes they send out to all the stores? Absolutely insane. Personal care products, used plastic cards like hotel room keys or gift cards. We'll talk about that a little bit too. The typical stuff. And we all know about this stuff. We use old newspapers and boxes for scenery, for making hills and mountain bases and so forth. Straws for pipes. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Old unusable rail for, trackside stuff, loads, maintenance way facilities. We all know that stuff. We're going to talk about some other things. One of the things I tell folks, though, is if you're going to do this, do it right. I've gone to so many layouts where, oh, that's a straw, man, because it's black and it's sticking out of the side of the ballast. Did it just get put in like 2 days ago? Because if it's been in any more than a week, it's grungy, it's dirty, it's rusted, it's flowing out into a cesspool of gunk, kind of like I have here. And this is actually a little modular layout that we have. Make it look realistic. So many times, again, I've seen it just it's a black straw and that's it. Or it was a straw that was some other color and they painted it, and then it really looks nasty. But make it look nasty this way with some scenery and so forth. And you can see my kind of cesspool up here in the top right corner with just some green gunk under that water. Lay it on the side of the side of your rail line here. And again, this is on a modular layout, so it's not real fancy. But if you're going to put it out there, don't just put that rail out there without painting it. Rust it up really well. And then it makes sense to have it there. All right, moving right along here. I said we take down layouts. Unfortunately, we have taken down a couple layouts in the last few years. The bad news with this layout is that we really had fun on this layout. It was set up for ops, and we did ops twice a month on this. Had two different crews rotating through there, and a lot of guys picked up a lot of other hours for the dispatcher certificate on this particular layout. But all good things come to an end. The gentleman who owns this is a good friend of mine, and we are building a new layout in a new location. It'll be a little smaller, but it'll be a little better for operations, we think. So we salvage things off of these things. Tom did a really good job of ballasting and laying down the track. So I was unable to pick up very much out of his layout. And you can see this is what happened to all that you just saw. Very little track actually came out of it, but a whole lot of rail came out of it. We salvaged all the electronics and so forth. Another friend of ours several years ago had a British-based layout, And Paul, unfortunately, did not do a great job of ballasting. Or wait, no, actually, fortunately, he did not do a great job of ballasting. So we were able to save all the flex track and then sell it on eBay, which was great. And that's actually what happened with his. So this is an interesting little building that was on my friend Paul's layout. And Paul has since moved to Kansas City, and with unfortunately no plans to build a new layout. But he had this structure, and most of you probably seen this on other layouts. This is a Pola model power Tibri, who knows what it was. This happened to be Pola actually, but marketed by a bunch of different manufacturers. And my wife and I took all these structures off the layout, except for this one. It would not budge. When I tried to lift it, it would not budge. I finally ended up getting a spatula underneath it and a screwdriver and just pried and pried and pried. And it finally popped off. And when it popped off, it came apart in pieces. Good news. The reason it came apart in pieces is because the glue was not very good and there was not a good job of gluing it together. So what I ended up with was basically the kit again that I had to reassemble. And I looked at it and said, I am not going to try and sell this thing on eBay. So I took that kit, and reworked it to look like that. Yep, that is exactly the same kit on the left and the right. And you can see some of the similarities there. If you look at the second floor, you can see all the closed doors and the one door that's open. Across the bottom, I just got rid of all those sliding doors. I just wanted it wide open because of the area that this is sitting in. So beyond just taking the kit itself, reassembling it, and then painting it with, are you ready for this? Rust-Oleum forest green paint. I did some other things with it, and all the little arrows are pointing to things that otherwise would have gone in the trash. Let's go talk about some of those things. So here's the things I did. The light fixtures on the left and right end, the sign backing because they covered holes that were in the side of the building. If I go back here a slide or two, you'll see on the left picture, that big hole on the right side. I didn't want that big hole there. So we covered it up with a sign similar to what you see on the left. The underlayment for the roof, and then the stacks of plywood and particle board that are in the middle of the floor there. And then there's actually a hole in the floor of the kit. And the idea was that you would have that hole, and then you drill a hole through the layout and run a light bulb up there, and you could light the building. Well, we're not going to do that with this, obviously. Once upon a time that might have made sense, but we're not going to do that. So I wanted to fill the hole. So let's go talk about how I did that. The roof underlayment. This was an easy one. I got rid of the roof that they had before, got rid of that goofy looking structure that popped out of it with the cyclone on it to collect sawdust. And I found a piece of big old plastic from something that we bought somewhere. I painted it that forest green, glued it on the top of there in two big pieces, and didn't have to go buy a big sheet of evergreen styrene. I got it for nothing. The cost of a little bit of glue and painting that thing and sticking it on there. It took me all of 5 minutes to do that. So that's one thing. Next, sign backing. I use an awful lot of gift cards in my modeling. Obviously, they are used gift cards. Thank you very much. But the back of the sign is nothing more than a gift card that I cut to size. And then I printed Dave's Lumber, named for my brother-in-law, and just glued that on with some rubber cement, and then glued both of those onto, as an assembly onto the side of the building. Again, save myself a little bit of money, not a lot, but a little bit of money by not having to buy any evergreen sheet material for that. And there you go. I love these things. Of course, when I use up a gift card and I say, I'd like that back, the Home Depot people and the Lowe's people are like, what are you going to do with this? It's empty. How can you possibly use this? And it's okay. It's okay. Trust me. Thank you. So there you go. Light fixtures. The light fixtures are kind of interesting. We're going to go into that a little bit. Those are totally scratch built. And this is what I use, lacking one item that's not on there. So the light fixture itself, the gooseneck is fairly stiff. twisty ties, twisty ties that you'd have with bread or something like that. Well, those aren't really very stiff. They're kind of wimpy, but HO scale Atlas track, if you buy a bundle of it, has these really nice, thick, twisty ties in there. So I was looking at it one day and said, this would be perfect. And it has just enough structure in it. It's just big enough, but just small enough that when you form it into a little gooseneck, it looks like what you see there. I'm going to show you a couple examples here in a minute too. And then, I had to go buy these things, some bamboo skewers that we're going to use for picks, uncoupling picks, and then the sequins and the light globes. I just bought, they were 40% off at the hobby shop here in town. And I think it was Michael's we went to. And then the sequins, of course. And all I did was I used some craft paint to paint the sequins green, different colors, because I wouldn't want them all the same. And then I used Eileen's or I used Crafter's Pick, depending upon what I had handy at the time, to glue it all together. And that's what they look like. Oh, there it is. There's the gooseneck itself. So again, usually we just throw this stuff away. And there you can see it on the end of the building. And there's my SP patched out UP locomotive. And there you see it in the lumber yard and on the side of this team track and on this building flat and on another building flat. And there it is in this lumber yard again. So again, using some stuff that was either El Cheapo or that we were going to throw away. The plywood and particle board, kind of a fun thing. So what I did was I used gift cards. Now, just between us friends, I'll tell you that these gift cards scale out to a thickness of about 3 inches. Okay, maybe even more than that. If I used something that was exactly the right thickness, it would be like a 3x5 card, a note card, maybe a little thicker than that, to scale it out to like 3/4 inch lumber. So, oh well. But no one who's looked at this has called me out on it yet and said, that lumber is too thick. And then on top of that, I went out to the internet and found some photos of top-down sheets of plywood or a particle board or whatever you wanted to put out there. So I just found out, measured it out, 4x8 sheet of HO scale in my case, cut those out of the gift cards and the hotel room key, glued them one on top of the other, printed the sheet material out on my color laser printer, cut that out, glued it on top, stick it in there. Oh, and I colored the ends of it kind of red or blue or whatever to kind of mark it that way. Everybody's looked at it and said, you know what, that's cool. So there you go. The hole in the floor. How am I going to get rid of this hole in the floor? Well, I looked at it and said, I'll just put a piece of, evergreen sheet material down there. And then I said, no, better than that. I'll put a gift card down there and just paint it green on the top. Who cares that it says Lowe's underneath? And how appropriate. It's a Lowe's gift card for a lumber yard. I thought that was just wonderful. So there you go. A whole bunch of stuff that we just, again, some of that stuff would have gone out in the trash. And honestly, the shape that this building looked at when it came off the layout, I was seriously considering just pitching it, but I said, no, I'll save this. Maybe I can use parts of it. And it was almost 2 years later when I said, you know what? I think, and there you go. So a fun little thing. Computer floppy disks. These things are just wonderful. I'm going to take one of these apart here in a little bit and talk about what you can do with these things if you use just a little bit of imagination. So just looking at them, the 8-inch disc on the left and the 5¼ inch disc in the middle, obviously there's some plastic on that, and that's really all you can use off of it. Take the diskette itself, the floppy part in the middle, throw it away, wash your hands, get all that iron oxide off of them. But you can use that plastic. It's really thin, so you may be able to use it some places. What I like about it, especially if you've got any 8-inch disc, which you probably don't, I got rid of mine years ago too, is it's got that kind of texture to it. Lay that down somewhere in a parking lot, and you've already got a textured asphalt surface in there. Obviously, you're going to need to paint it and weather it and so forth, but you've already got that. And the 5.25, it's a little smaller, but you can still do that in some smaller parking lots. But here's some examples of bits and pieces of diskettes that I used. The stop sign in the top left, the cross bucks, that's actually part of a diskette. What I did was I created the stop sign and the cross bucks on my computer in PowerPoint, printed it out on a piece of paper, and then I glued those to the shutter. Now the shutter on a 3.5-inch, shutter on a 3.5-inch diskette is the part that flips back and forth down there to reveal the read-write part of it. So that's this part right in here, the shutter. And usually they're metal. Well, you know what? These are all metal back signs. So you can see a couple other signs on here as well, like the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway Company no trespassing sign, created exactly the same way. Except I didn't actually use a piece of paper. I used a label because label already has stickum on it. So I didn't even have to put any glue on it. Peel it apart, cut it, peel it apart, put it on there, done. So what do you see for computer disks here? Well, those cement slabs that you see next to the lumber mill and out in the unloading area next to the tracks are all 3.5-inch diskette parts. When you look at a 3.5-inch diskette, let me go back again, you do have that flat surface. This one is covered by a label. Well, if it didn't have a label, it'd make it easier, but it's a nice flat surface and there is a little bit of texture to it. So I just put them down there, cut them out. It does have some stuff on the back, but I knew where I was going to use them. So I just jam them in the scenery at that point, glue them down really good. I painted them with some craft paint. Actually, it's oatmeal color to simulate concrete slabs. And it seems to look pretty good where they are. So there you go. So let's talk about my friend Dan Hanel, fellow MMR. He and I were neck and neck getting there. I'm number 698 and he's number 700. So I beat him. However, he has a very operational railroad, and we're still constructing this now. Rail Express, it's named RX, Rail Express, because Dan, by trade, before he retired, was a pharmacist. So it's kind of a play on that, your operational prescription. Dan's HO scale modular layout has been in 3 national conventions as a home layout. He was in Grand Rapids, was transferred to Atlanta, had a year or two to get the railroad up and running there before the national convention, retired, moved to Indianapolis, and he had the railroad operating about 2 or 3 weeks, if I remember right, before the Indy convention in 2016. So it's been in 3 national conventions as a home layout. But Dan's pretty interesting. It is not a mainline railroad. It is entirely a terminal railroad where a lot of switching, but he can have a dozen guys down there and you won't see each other for a while. It is so huge. Dan has some grandchildren and they love this organic yogurt. And he was looking at that one day and said, you know what? That stuff, the top of it would make great vents for buildings. Cool. So if you know what it is, you're like, oh, I know what that is. But if you don't know, take a look at some of those structures. They look like, rooftop vents. They look really well. And what did it take? Snip the top off, paint it silver, put it down on the building, and you're done. Stuff that normally would just go to the trash. Some of the things you see in here, kind of interesting. This one, not the one on the left, but the third one over from the left, this stack of 3 is actually a stack of 3 paint can lids, spray can lids that he glued together. The piping you see are coat hangers. And some of the others are little bits that he took off of other containers and so forth. Just said, you know what, I think that'll work. I think that'll look fine. And away you go. All right. And this, if you buy milk in the carton, or if you buy orange juice in a carton, like a quart carton, sometimes you've got this little lift-throwing thing and you have to pull the top off. That's what that is. And I'll show you that in a couple of minutes here. But that's all that is, Again, something that normally you go, ooh, yuck, that's icky, let me throw it away. He's like, we're washing those and putting them on the layout. And then, again, the pipe going in there is another coat hanger. All right, let's do some hands-on stuff here. Or actually, what I'm going to do is stop my share. There we go. Thank you. And if you guys go in and change the view to, just show me and make it speaker view, that's probably going to work out best. Brooks, if you can spotlight there you go. That'll help. And that'll help you guys see what I'm talking about. So talking about a couple of things. This is that top of the carton that I was talking about. So, you just pop this thing off. And as I said, Dan just kind of turned this around and painted it some color, white in that case that you saw, and it became the top of that storage tank. Let's jump in. I got a bunch of stuff here. I mean, trust me, a bunch of stuff. As I said, straws, big straws, little straws. I love these for stir sticks. You know how about doing that stuff. These guys are not in business anymore, but at one time there was a 0130 layout it was a traveling layout, and this family brought it to many of our Division 8 train show and sales events, and all the structures were built with McDonald's wood stir sticks. And several of the ore cars on that 0130 layout were also built with these things. And of course, we know about those things. I think that came from Outback Steakhouse. It's a great uncoupling pick, of course. Let me see what else is in here. All this stuff. Caribou Coffee. Caribou Coffee is nowhere near you guys. Our daughter lives in Minnesota, and Caribou Coffee is up there. So this is cool stuff. And my wife thinks that we're going to have a Caribou, you can almost see that now, a Caribou Coffee building on our layout. I'm like, we're modeling the Santa Cruz branch in California, sweetie, in 1981. They didn't have one of those, okay? So all sorts of fun stuff you can pick up at fast food restaurants, or, not fast food, but restaurants. Talk about this diskette. As a former IT guy, married to a former IT gal, we have hundreds of these around the house that I haven't gotten rid of. And we've gotten rid of hundreds of these, I know, over the years. And that's the way it goes. You may still have some around. I'm sure some of you, along with us, were members of the AOL Diskette of the Month Club. Okay. We have some other fun ones in here and so forth. And they just go on and on and on. This is the one I use. If someone gives me a hard drive and I need to wipe it clean, it's a piece of software I downloaded off the internet, put on this diskette. I boot the computer with this, and I have one computer set off on the side just for this purpose. It boots up and it says, what do you want to wipe and how well do you want to wipe it clean? And I just walk away and just punch the buttons and walk away. And about an hour later, or if it's a really hard drive, really big hard drive, sometimes it'll take a few hours to do that. Done. And then I know it's got a security wipe on it. Let's talk about these guys. So this is where you might want to wear some safety glasses, especially if you've never taken one of these apart. I've taken bunches of them apart. So trust me, we're good to go in this. And of course, there's 2 holes on the top of this. There's the other one, okay? 2 holes on the top. And if you remember back from the 3.5-inch diskette days, and I think all of you do, the one that slid up and down would slid up and down to make it write protected. So if you slide it up, you can't write anything to it. Down, it doesn't matter for us, but we're going to use that little piece in there. What else? Well, let's take it apart. First thing I do is I take the shutter off of this thing. I like this one because it's metal. There are some that are plastic and they suck because, they're not as usable for me. So I'll just kind of put my fingers back there and just kind of pry that off. And sometimes they're a little stubborn, but there it is. It's off. Now I've got this fantastic piece of metal. Put that to the side. To open this up, there's a couple different ways. Now there is a spring right in here. So I usually take that out. If I don't, it's going to be somewhere here in the layout room, and the Roomba will find it. I know that, so I'm not too worried about it. And then I just take my fingers and I kind of spread this apart best I can. There we go. Just kind of wiggle your finger in there and just kind of pull that apart. And sometimes they'll come across at night, and sometimes they won't. Just take a moment here. Go and on, and there you go. And now I have this sucker apart. Okay, so I've got this is the back of it, and as you can see, there is some flat material there, and I don't know if you can hear that or not, but there is a little bit of texture to it. So if I've got a small parking lot, maybe I could use that. Maybe not. This piece on the inside, take that out, throw it away. You don't want that. This piece of plastic in here, take that out, throw it away. You don't want that either, okay? That's actually got the iron oxide from the diskette itself floating in there. You don't want that. Okay, so on the other side, again, we'll take this. We'll throw this away as well. We don't want that. This label, I think, is going to be stubborn, but I'll see what it does. Yeah, it's going to be stubborn. That's okay. What I'll do probably is use some Goo Gone or something that some of that orange cleaning stuff. Let it soak in there for an hour. Take it out, and it'll come right off. But think about this. I've now got this large piece here. Excuse me. This large piece here, and if it was a cleaner one, let's see if I got one in here. Well, I've got bad disc, but you can at least see the size of that. That's a decent sized chunk of plastic that I can use, and that's exactly what I use to create those pads, those cement pads for the parking and for the offloading ramp at the lumber mill. I've also used this in some other areas, but it works pretty well. And again, the cost was zippity doodah. And with that little bit of texture, if you don't, really spray it heavy, you're going to actually see that texture coming out, weather it a little bit. Yeah. That cost me, nothing. I was going to throw this away. I was going to security wipe it or, take some scissors through this thing and be done with it. The other thing is, if you want, you can take this off, and you've got this little disc as well. This goes in the trash. I have not yet come up with a good use for these guys. They're interesting, but I haven't come up with a good use for them other than throwing them in back of one of my industrial buildings on the layout, or maybe put him in an open load or something. But it's almost like it almost doesn't fit in a gondola. It does fit in a gondola, but almost doesn't. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those guys. I'm really not sure. It doesn't bother me that much, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it. But the spring, I haven't found a use for the springs either. They're around. I got a big old bag of them. Probably got more than that. So this guy, okay, what we'll do is or at least what I do is I'll bend it once, bend it again. This one's a little stiffer than most. Oh, yeah. Usually, they will come apart much easier than this guy is coming apart. Grab a different one here. Oh, cheap IBM one. Okay, so usually we can bend it once or twice, and then we'll take a pair of pliers, and I know I got some pliers back here, and to get that off, we'll just bend this a couple times. You guys know how this goes, Bend it a couple times, and it's going to start coming off as well. So now I've got essentially I have three parts here, and this will go into scrap load. This long one will go into scrap load, or out behind an industrial business where they might have tossed it out there for whatever reason. That's what I do with them. You can do something else, but now I've got these big flat pieces here on both of these guys, and I can do stuff with those. Those signs I made came from this. Not only on my modular layout, they'll be on this big thing back here, and I've made some for a couple friends here in town as well. So I just print them. As I said, I I do this in either PowerPoint or in Word. Use your piece of software that you feel most comfortable with. If you want to use Publisher, or if you want to go crazy and you use Photoshop, fine. I think that's overkill. These are pretty easy to do, and it's just a single piece of paper. And as you can see here, for UPS shipping only. Oops, don't tell the UPS people. But it's just a shipping label. That's all it is, just a shipping label. So you take the things, you cut them out, you put them on there. I will actually, what I'll do is I'll actually cut these a little large and then place them on here. Or if I'm going to do like half a dozen of these, I'll just, cut them 1, 2, 3, whatever. And you can see how they'd line up on there, whatever. Let me get that up there. You can see how that would work. Put them on there and then just cut them out. And this stuff is thin enough that a regular pair of scissors that you have for the layout, okay, not the ones you took from the sewing room or from the kitchen, but the ones you have for the layout. And I have several down here, and you're done with it. Okay, it's pretty darn cool to be able to do that, and pretty easy to do it too. Again, stuff you would have thrown away. So I'm going to put these out of my way for a minute, and looking for little thing here. There it is. Okay. So this is from the layout that came down that's being rebuilt. My friend Tom has a bunch of these gondolas run around the layout, and he uses them for scrap. And I wasn't really happy with the scrap load, so I made him a scrap load. And you can all guess where that came from. It came from diskettes. Pretty easy. It just pops right out of there. Okay, so there it is. What I did was, it's not very thick. It's thick enough to do what we needed to do in Tom's layout. You can see some of those. Here it is. See, like, there we go. Like this guy right here. And there's another couple of them right here. That was this stuff. And they're perfect for this. In fact, I think I'd have been better off just to use those only in here, but that's the way it goes. And then for the bottom of it, well, you can see what it is. It's gift card material. It's actually Wendy's gift card. I love Wendy's gift cards. Not because I love Wendy's, but because Wendy's gift cards give you the gift card, and then there's a big piece of plastic on top, and that big piece of plastic you can use immediately. So actually what happened here is, you might be able to see this, you might not. There's a piece here, there's a piece here, and then right on top, there's kind of a shorter piece, not so wide, that I use as a bridge to glue these two parts together. And, I just used good old Eileen's or the other tacky glue and glued it down. And it seems to work pretty darn well. What can I say? So that keeps us out of trouble a little bit for that. Talking about 5 1/4 inch diskettes. Again, I don't have a whole lot of these left because they went away, in the mid 2000s probably is the latest I hung on to those. There are a few of them. They do have that kind of texture. You can kind of see they've got a little bit of texture in there. So if you can find some, you might be able to use them for asphalt services and so forth. So CDs. I have not found a good use for these except as paint palettes. That's the only thing I found a good use for them. I just not happy with trying to find a good use for these guys. Although they are kind of reflective, but nah, not really. But they make good paint palettes unless you're thinning the acrylics that you're using. And I usually don't when I'm painting rail and some of the basic things around here. So they work well for that. Obviously, they're not going to hold anything if it's thinned out real much. Okay, where is? I'm looking. Hang on. DCR tapes. So I like the old Scotch DCR tapes because they come with a nice plastic sleeve. Lots of plastic to use there. Ooh, ah. It's not textured, but still, that's that's decent stuff. That cost me a couple of bucks at the hobby shop. But when you start taking these things apart, usually the hardest thing is, which side do I start with? Well, one of these sides is going to be a little bit easier to get off than the other. I probably ought to use a screwdriver for that. You got to get in there and pop that guy out. And now I've got this piece of plastic here that I may or may not be able to use. This is, of course, the tape. When you open this up, and I'm not going to open this whole thing up for you right now, but screws I can save. But honestly, there's usually not a lot in here that I think is very usable. There are some bits and pieces that you may be able to use as you take a look in there. Sometimes it's a nice flat surface here, and again, harvest that plastic. Sometimes on the ends, usually not. What I have found in some of these is there are some rollers or capstans in there and some other things that keep the tape nice and neat going through there. And you can pull those out, use those for scrap along the right of way, behind an industrial complex, in an open load, something of that nature. But honestly, I haven't found much usable in most of the VCR tapes that we have or had around here. Oh, this is what I was looking for. The VCR tapes were hanging on top of it. Aha. So Showcase Miniatures, and if you don't know about Showcase Miniatures, you really ought to. Showcase Miniatures does some great stuff. One of the things they sell is a packet of signs. In that packet, not only do they have these stick-on road signs, they also have, these nice road sign posts. And these are etched metal. They are wonderful. I bought a packet of these because I wanted to make this for Russ's layout. Now Russ's layout, we're not using the 4x4 posts on the Pikeville layout. We are, because that's what they had at that time. We're modeling it in Pikeville, Kentucky. But on Russ's layout, I wanted these guys, and as you can see, there are several missing. So those are sitting out on Russ's New York Central layout. But I'm like, man, I really don't need these because I'm printing my own signs. I really don't, and I don't need all these signs. So I reached out to the Showcase Miniature people, and Debbie, one of the co-owners, was kind enough to email me back and said, sure, we can make those available for you. And now you can go to the Showcase Miniature site. You got to dig around to find them. And you can buy just the signpost, the packet of 4. So there's 4 of those sheets in there without paying for these guys. It's wonderful. It's great. And they are nice. And then you can kind of see the sign here, that crossbucks and the stop sign that we've got there. And then one of the things that I did for Russ, and we did a lot of signage on his layout. And again, this stuff is all created. I'm just going to use these pliers. They're going to be good enough. Maybe I will. They're going to be good enough to show you guys. But they wanted some, and I know you can't see that very well, but you can kind of sort of see what it says. And it's more has to do with the resolution on the camera, I think. It says New York NYC RR, private property, no trespassing. And we've got a bunch of signs around the railroad like that, especially around the yard office and some other facilities there. And it really has spiffed up the layout by doing that. All right, all that goes in. And again, I glue those together with, guess what, the crossbucks, the Eileens, or the tacky glue, the signage, as I said, you saw that. I've got this, the labels, just cut them out and away you go. And again, I cut it out. I put that right on the diskette shutter, and then I just cut around it with a pair of scissors and away you go. Works out pretty darn well. Although a lot of people come up with other suggestions how it would be easier, and I keep going, yeah, but this is easy enough, and it works. I don't have to think about it too much. All right, off of that. Hey, you guys recognize this? This is 3/7 of a week of pills, but it's not. Inside here is a double pole, double throw switch, and a 9-volt battery connected to a couple wires. So many times I've been on a layout helping somebody troubleshoot a misbehaving tortoise switch machine. Like, oh my God, how are we going to test this thing? We're not sure if it's the wiring or it's the tortoise. And if it's the tortoise, how are we going to test this thing without, oh, how do we do this? You know, because you want to disconnect it, this, that, and the other. Here's my solution. This is my tortoise tester connected with wires. And all the electronics on my layout are connected with, other than suitcase connectors coming right off the bus, but coming right off the bus to the feeders and going up to the rail or up to the tortoises, I'm using these Wago connectors. And if you haven't seen these Wagos before, man, you need to go check these out. It's a Wago 221. They come in 3 different sizes, a 2, a 3, and a 5 connector, okay? So what we'll do is we'll just, and they're lever locks. Again, if you've seen these, great. I apologize for wasting your time here, but they're just, you just pull this guy up, and then you take the other bit of wire, jam it in that opening, slide that lever connector down, that lever lock down, and now you've got these connected. So I've got this guy and I've got this guy. So if I'm under the layout, I'm going to connect, I'm going to disconnect these 2 wires, okay, from my block connector and connect them with just the Wagos to this guy. And I'm going to throw the switch over here. And immediately I know, it ain't the tortoise that's gone bad. Thank goodness we don't have to take that sucker out and replace it. Or, oh man, it is the tortoise. Oh, and then we got something else to do. But at least we have an idea of whether or not it is, and we can move on to the next step of troubleshooting. Maybe it's the wiring or something. But that has saved us a lot on a couple of layouts here in Louisville, saying, wait. Let's test it first before we do something else. And I've seen all sorts of crazy things that guys have come up with to test those things, and those work pretty darn well. What else we got in here? Oh, remember the scissors? These are my scissors, okay? And as I said, if you want to cut this stuff, they cut it without any trouble at all. That's it, it's thin enough. And that is pretty thick stuff, the Fujifilm stuff. They overachieved on it. Several years ago, Bob Frankrone, and if you read the NMRA magazine, you should know who Bob Frankrone is. He's the Love Those Loads guy, and he's actually a Division 8 member, lives just a few miles from me. He was saving toothpaste tubes. Toothpaste tubes? Yeah. He was saving toothpaste tubes that had been obviously used, washing them out, cutting them open, again, your scissors, not hers, cutting them open, washing them out, and this is kind of metallic. And what Bob did was very similar to what I did with this load. And he would cut it up into smaller, chunky size pieces, and then put those into a gun, put them into a load, glue them all down and so forth. And and he actually did a Love Those Loads article on that. Stuff you normally would throw away. Well, guess what? Some of these guys don't have the metallic stuff inside. So be careful, buy the right toothpaste. Okay. You know better than that. Do whatever works for you. Aha. So one of the industries that we will have on the Santa Cruz branch of the railroad that we're modeling, and we're taking some artistic license with it, we're going to have Yoyodyne Industries there. And Yoyodyne is a spacecraft kind of industry thing. And if you know what Yoyodyne, if you get the inside joke there, where Yoyodyne comes from. And they get deliveries of odd shaped things like this. This will be in a gondola load, actually on a flat, and it'll be all braced and everything. This is not a ping pong ball. No, it's not. It's the top of one of these. In fact, I think, nope, it's not the top of that one. And all you do to get this guy out, a couple different ways. You can use a knife, cut this. You can use a motor tool, cut around this thing. I used my scissors, jammed it in there, cut it. Thank goodness my wife wasn't around because she'd have been going, what are you doing? You're going to hurt yourself. She's probably right. I probably will one of these days hurt myself doing some of this crazy stuff. Hey, how many of you got these pins? Either from Rapido or other people. I have a bunch of pins from my IT days, like Symantec and Microsoft and other antivirus people and security stuff and on and on and on and on. I don't need these pins. I really don't. No one wants to buy these pins on eBay. Trust me. They don't want them. They're landfill. No, they're not. These weigh 1/4 ounce. So guess what? Once upon a time, when I was working on my car certificate for my MMR, I needed some weight in this guy. You'll find a whole bunch of these guys down there in the bottom. Down there on the bottom. They're a little wide, but not by much. Hang on. But not by much. Okay. All I did was on the bottom, okay, glue, 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 and it brought it right up to weight. And they were free. All I had to do was glue them inside there, but I would have had to glue any kind of weight I had anyway. Again, the whole purpose of this talk is you get some trash, don't throw it out. Think about what you can use it for. One of our friends here in town, Mark Norman, another MMR, uses bottle caps for his paint palettes. I don't, just because I don't. I use the CDs. If I was doing something that was very liquidy, I might do that, but I might not. But no, again, stuff you might have otherwise. All right, Brooks, how are we doing on time?
Doing just fine.
Doing just fine? Okay. Yeah. Oh man, I got 2 more boxes of stuff. No, I won't go that long. Just a couple things. So, notebooks. Notebooks. Forget the paper, and you've used all the paper out of it anyway. But you know what? They got these spiral things. And when you straighten out these spiral things, this may not seem like a big thing, but when you straighten out these spiral things, you now have conduit. Or you have pipe, or you have something else. Yeah, it takes a little bit to do it, and maybe it's more trouble than what it's worth, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway that you could do that. It's a nice thickness of stuff, and I don't have it here handy with me. I've actually used this conduit on a billboard that I scratch built. So have you guys done anything with Dave Ackman out of St. Louis?
No, but I have seen his clinics on NMRAX.
Yeah, Dave did a virtual clinic for us on, this is when we were in lockdown though, on scratch building a billboard, and really nice clinic. And then he was gracious enough to actually send us a copy of a set of the templates, jigs, fixtures. I guess it's fixtures, or Tim Waris, Mr. Fast Track, would come after me. So fixtures to use to build them. And I built a couple of those, so it's kind of cool. All right, looking for some more metal, some more cheap, thin metal. This is a spout out of a dish detergent box. Okay, again, more trash. And I know there are some times when it gets really rough at night, in the evenings when you come home, whatever, it's been a tough time at an operating session. So you pop open that bottle of bubbly. Well, you know what? That bottle of bubbly has this wrapper on it. And guess what? This becomes a scrap load, right? Absolutely. And once upon a time, when I was an instructor somewhere, I was the instructor of the month. Well, you know what? It's a metal plate. It's brass. It'll get used on the layout eventually. It hasn't, this one hasn't yet, but it will eventually. Oh, September 1998 too. Okay, so there you go. Again, all sorts of fun stuff. I like these. If you ever buy socks or someone in the house buys socks, tell them not to throw these things away. You know, the socks come on those, unless they come in a big bag, of course. But sometimes they come on these things. This is a nice size for piping, industrial facility, between tanks, whatever you can use that for. If you've never opened up a hard drive, it's interesting. I thought I was going to find all sorts of awesome stuff, and I know what they look like inside, but I was like, oh man, we're going to get all sorts of stuff. The biggest challenge with it is holy, you got to use so many customized screwdriver bits to open these up, and they're just a royal pain sometimes. But if you got a hex and some other, star, whatever. So this one, already open. And I've looked at this, and I've looked at this, and I've looked at this, and I keep thinking there's got to be something I can do with this. Jerry Leone, in his Off the Rails series of videos for Kalmbach, talked about using these. And the whole reason, and I thought it was crazy, the whole reason to get one of these, buy it cheap somewhere or whatever, was so that you could get the rare earth magnet out of here. Really? Just for one magnet? They don't cost that much. But what Jerry was saying was he had a source, a computer guy that was getting rid of a bunch of them. So he was able to do that. And the reason Jerry was using the rare earth magnets was, they're super magnets. So on his fascia, in his layout room, he has fascia up above that covers the lights for the upper deck. And what they would do is have in certain places up there, they would have on the inside of the fascia, they would have a super magnet. Well, if you knew that, you could put your train order right up there and another super magnet on the other side, and it would stay up there, which is kind of neat. Okay, I use super magnets, not these, for uncoupling on the layout here. So they're buried underneath the ties, and they work just fine. They work a lot better than the KD uncoupling stuff. But that's one thing. There are some interesting things in here, and again, I think the biggest thing we're going to be able to do is use some of these bits and pieces in back of industrial areas for junk. And you can never have too much junk behind industrial areas, in yards and so forth. Tons of screws in there. And I keep looking at this, at the platter itself, the disc itself, and thinking, what in the world am I going to use that for? And then I was doing this and I went, it's a mirror. It's a mirror. Huh. I have a couple places where in the big room where we're building out the layout where I was going to put a mirror. This mirror won't break. I might be able to use this because I don't need a big mirror in those places. I might be able to do that. I might be able to. I talked about yard signs. So, for one of several reasons, I don't fertilize my yard. I let the local lawn care guys do it. I do all the other yard work, but I let them do that for me. So, I'm looking at these yard signs going, what can I do with this? And honestly, it's coated paper. It's yucky stuff. I can't do anything. But you know what? If I trim this off and I trim this off, I now have a piece of material, and it's kind of, I might be able to use that as some structural component in a building or out somewhere on the layout. I haven't figured out where yet, but by golly, I got about a dozen of these hanging around. Okay, what would you use? Broken ice tray. Now, I have trained Ms. Barbara very well. She doesn't throw away stuff very often without saying, can you use this on the layout? This was, I don't know how many ancient years, I have no idea how old this was, but it was ancient. And she was doing this with it like we all do. And she went, ah. Actually, she said something else, but we're going to say she said, ah. And I said, what happened? And she said, oh, ice screw tray broken. I said, great. Now I have something for my paint when I do liquidy stuff, because I don't like that thing that Mark Norman did with the box, with the bottle caps. So yeah, I like that. Cool. Okay, that's that. Cassette tapes are kind of the same as the VCR tapes. There's some stuff inside there you might be able to use, but probably not, other than junk, whatever. But we never have enough junk. When we do this live in person, I'm not going to ask you guys to unmute. I do the quiz. Anybody know what this came from? Anybody know what this came from? Anybody know what this came from? And the answer is, I'm not sure, but it either came from a roll of aluminum foil or wax paper or parchment paper. And we will use this. I love this serrated edge on here, but we will use this. If nothing else, this is going to get chopped up into yet another load. We can always do loads with that.
That's like the razor on the box where you peel the, foil or whatever out.
Absolutely. When you go,
yeah.
Absolutely. And honestly, Brooks, I think other than some of the same old stuff in here, like screws, things like that, that's pretty much what I got tonight. That's pretty much what I got. We went through just about everything. We usually don't do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that ends pretty much what I have to tell you all about. And again, the idea is, don't limit your imagination to what I just showed you. Hopefully what I've done is keyed a few things in your brain to go, you know what? Let me look at that before we take it out to the trash. I sometimes have to go through the stuff that Barbara saves and get rid of some of it because she saves too much sometimes. But hopefully you'll take a look at it and there's kind of a couple things you gone, aha, hadn't thought about that, or kind of sort of maybe think about something else. It's always interesting to me that after I do these presentations on either repurposing this stuff or repurposing freight cars, locomotives, and so forth to use on your layout, that I always get an email or two from someone who says, oh man, look what I thought of. And so that sometimes finds its way in here as well. So, Brooks, that's what I've got for you guys tonight. Thank you for letting me spend an hour or so with you and
thanks.
Share some of the goofy stuff that I do.
Part with what you talked about, one thing I could add is those, when you get stuff in plastic containers, like the clear plastic containers, or, they'll have like a window opening, say like a toy container or something. I've used those, that clear plastic's great for making windows with. So, just something to think about there. So
hang on.
I was actually going to ask that same thing with the VCR tapes when they have those tape viewing windows. Cut those out and be another item to use and use for windows.
Yeah, this is an old roundhouse car. Probably recognize it, that that I've painted and lettered for our Santa Cruz and Felton that we're modeling. And all the glass you see is exactly what you said, Brooks. The windows here and the clerestory, all I did was paint the inside of the clerestory, paint those green and put them up there and done. And the same thing with the Santa Cruz and Felton caboose there. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute and, or if you've used any weird things or something on your layout, trash, let us, we'd love to see it. Yeah.
I don't have a photo yet of it, but one item I have used with the bread ties, besides keeping uncoupling couplers together, especially in O gauge, sometimes I get a pin that goes haywire, but sometimes I've used them for grab irons as well on O gauge box cars. They may be a little bit, they're probably definitely too thick for HO, but for O gauge, they're get the thick ones just right. They're good for steps and grab irons, maybe even a little too thin for O gauge, but sometimes you can find some nice little round ones that just work out just quite nicely.
Cool. You know what? That reminds me of a stop that Barbara and I made on the way back from the Mid-Central Region Convention in Pittsburgh. Let me share again here for a minute. It'd be about a dozen slides. This was it was near Wheeling, West Virginia, but this is believe it or not, this is an indoor G-scale layout in what used to be a Ford dealership, if you can believe that. How crazy is that? See, these slides will go forward for me. Oh, no. There we go. So there's the outside of the building. This is walking into it. And yeah, we know that. It's humongous. And what you don't realize until these guys start talking to you is almost everything in here is repurposed. Almost all the tall structures you see here, this one to the right and this red one, those are old yard signs. You know, the yard signs that are kind of that corrugated plastic, that's what they constructed these things out of. Holy moly. This isn't too hard to imagine. These are old rattle cans that they just painted rattle can and put in place as some kind of structure there. Now, because it's O scale, because it's G scale and it's inside, they even have mulch here, and that's what all the ground cover is in the foreground, mulch. I don't think we can get away with that even in O scale, guys. You know, I think you got to go to G to do that. There are over, I wish I knew the number, but there are more than 250 Christmas trees on this thing that they have used here and there and wherever. Oh my goodness. You may not recognize this. My wife recognized it immediately. And when she said it, I'm like, of course it is. This is the cross-stitch material that you would buy from Joann or Hobby Lobby or something like that. That's what this stuff is. And it just looks like fencing in G scale. In O scale or you know, anything smaller than that, I don't know what it would look like. But I'm thinking about it, thinking, you know, maybe I could use that in an industrial complex or something for something. It just laying there and so forth. So he had some PVC pipe down there, and there's kind of a bigger scene of some of the stuff that's hanging around out there, and even some more Christmas tree bits and pieces in the foreground. So, all right, that's it. I just want to show you guys that. That's it. Since we were talking about other scales. I should have mentioned that. I'm a bad guy. I'm scale agnostic. Trust me, we have a G scale train that goes under the Christmas tree. I participate in T-Track.
A rubber gauger, huh?
One of the things that
as my dad said, what, you can't decide?
One of the things that I want to do is for my T-Track, I've got a building and I want to take a bottle cap, put a ping pong ball on it, put a sensor on the side so that when someone walks up and have a little Arduino in it, an LED in the ping pong ball, so they get close to it, it'll start flashing faster.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
You could probably put a golf ball on it, make a Doppler radar out of that or something.
Oh, I know. I want the LED to flash through the ping pong ball.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And I'm even thinking about doing an RGB one so it would change colors with different distances or something.
Oh, yeah. That'd be cool. Yeah.
That'd be cool. That would be cool. Yeah.
Are you using any Arduino stuff on your layout?
I am not. Now, Russ, that I talked about earlier, has a large New York Central layout based in the mid-50s. Excuse me. And we have put an Arduino signaling system in there. It is gorgeous. It is just amazing. We are about
if you want to learn anything about Arduino and how to use it, talk to Gert Mueller, Speed.
Oh, yeah.
He is the superb expert.
He is. I know. Yep.
I was just looking at the convention's train order list and of things to do during it, and I saw a lot of programs on how to use the Arduino, some hands-on, so that would definitely be very helpful to a lot of people that are wanting to get into, especially signaling, switching, everything. It's just right there. Good to use.
I think Speed is doing the hands-on, isn't he?
Yes, he is doing some. Yeah. I know him. I know him well enough. He will.
Yeah, he is. I've actually done one of his clinics a year or two ago. So I've got a bunch of Arduinos, but really haven't gotten into actually doing something. So that was the first time I was able to put something together, and kind of takes the edge off of the fear, you know. not that I'd screw something up, but I just look at it and I'm like, well, I'm not really sure what to do about it. You know, more of a hands-on. So, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that at the convention.
There's a lot of good stuff going on. Yep.
But yeah, Speed has 2 clinics for basic setup and then one for beginners and one for the proficient. Now, they are all sold out. So insofar as actually doing the hands-on, there's no table space available, but there's nothing to stop you from holding up the wall and absorbing the information.
Possibly, yep. And people do cancel out.
Yeah.
We did a modeling with masters. It was with acrylic paints at the Mid Central Region Convention. We had 12 seats sold out within the first month, actually within the first 2 weeks when we announced it, and we had 4 no-shows. But we had 4 people standing in the door and they got seats. So it happens sometimes.
Well, the tricky part with Speed's clinics is that you have to bring your own materials. He's got the software, will help with the programming, but there's a kit that he has listed online. So if you want to take that chance, by all means, and if you don't get a chance at the convention itself, you can always use it later.
Right. Yeah.
Well, does anybody have any other questions or anything they want to add?
For those who are really interested in the Arduino, there's a special user group on Facebook called Arduino for Model Railroading.
Cool. I'll have to see if I'm part of that one. So usually part of a lot of those. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that, Dennis. And be sure to check that out. So I think we probably ought to have some Arduino clinics coming up here soon. So I'll look out for those for coming up the rest of this year. So, but I want to thank Fred for presenting for us tonight, and appreciate you joining in and coming all the way in from Illinois or Indiana. Is that right? Kentucky. Oh gosh. I'm sorry. So yeah. So thanks for joining us, and certainly enjoyable clinic. And one thing I thought was very interesting was the paint caps on the as tanks and stuff. So I know kind of a boring thing, but with a little putty and sanding, you can make those things look pretty decent. So yeah. So
All right, come join you guys. It's always fun.
Yeah. Well, and maybe we'll have to have you back on in the future with some other clinics too. So,
Sure.
Yeah. So, and like I said at the beginning, Fred's a part of the Division 8 of the Mid Central region, and there's a YouTube channel out there. If you see the logo on his shirt there, if you look for that on the YouTube, that'll get you there. And I've subscribed to that, so there's a lot of cool, a lot of good clinics on there, and that's where I first saw him, this clinic on there. So, and then Division 5 has a YouTube channel as well. So if y'all, for those that joined in later as Fred was presenting, just search for that, and I'll process this and upload it probably in a day or so, get it up there. And but I have all the previous meetings up there. There's a few that we didn't get to record, and then there's a few that didn't happen on some months. So those are up there for everybody to enjoy. So the next August, we won't have a meeting because it's going to fall, the third Monday falls on the first Monday of the convention, national convention in Grapevine. So I'm going to be busy up there doing that. And but we'll have a convention a meeting in August, or no, sorry, not August, September. So I'll put out an announcement soon. I'm working on lining up clinicians for that one. So just stay tuned, and I'll announce, make those announcements in the future here. So I want to thank for everybody for coming and joining us. I'm gonna end the meeting now, and but I'll keep the meeting open. So if anybody wants to hang out and chit chat or anything, talk model trains, we can do so. So see you next time.
Thank you
Brooke.
very
Thanks,
much.
Fred.
You bet.
Thank you, Fred.
You bet, man.